if you know your history, you know where you're coming from.
We would like to play.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 dates that changed video gaming forever.
For the first time, let me now unveil Xbox.
Before we begin, we publish new videos every day, so be sure to subscribe for more great content. For this list, we'll be looking at the historic landmarks that had the biggest impact on the industry and the culture around video games. The electronic medium hasn't been around quite as long as film or television, but despite its comparatively short history, this list will be focusing on the most pivotal moments that led us to where we are today. Number 10, October 26th, 2000, launch of the PlayStation 2.
Everyone's ready, right? Who has the PlayStation 2?
Sony had a respectable debut to the gaming world with their original PlayStation, but it was the PS2 that really took the company to new heights. Not only did their platform produce some of the best looking titles of its generation, but it was the only place to find the newest titles in franchises like Metal Gear Solid and Final Fantasy.
What are you doing here?
I was waiting for you.
What are you talking about?
That, combined with the ability to read DVDs right out of the box, ensured that it held its place in home media setups of over 150 million homes, starting the trend of consoles being more than just simple gaming machines.
There goes the winner! What an incredible race!
Number 9, November 19th, 2006, launch of the Wii. The revolutionary Nintendo console might not have been the hardcore gaming system that fans of the Japanese giant were hoping for after the GameCube, but it really marked the major emergence of casual gaming in the mainstream public eye. I mean, how many other consoles does your grandma own? Exactly. Banking on its innovative and yes, gimmicky motion controls, Nintendo had a smash hit on their hands that everyone else tried to cash in on. Most importantly, this was when the Big N stopped caring about the power of their machines and really decided to distance themselves from the direct competition of Sony and Microsoft. Number 8, May 11th, 1995, the first E3.
Okay, here we are at E3 with Dean Fox, who's the Executive Vice President of Marketing at Atari. I'm sorry, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Atari.
Christmas for gamers, aside from, Christmas. The Electronic Entertainment Expo is where new titles are announced, demoed, and where wish lists for the entire year to follow are crafted. But it took a while for E3 to become what it is today.
We are 5 years away from entering the 21st century.
The now yearly conference saw a dramatic increase in importance over the more than 20 years since its inception, and has since gone from being a business-oriented affair to a full-blown convention for fans, and is now arguably more of a press event than anything else. It's taken on many forms, but its influence is stronger than ever.
Prepare to enter the theater of the eye.
Number 7, September 12th, 2003, the launch of Steam.
Hello, Gordon Freeman. Gordon, it's good to see you.
Great games have always been available on PC, whether on floppy disks or CD-ROMs or downloaded as shareware. But it was never easier to get up and running than with Valve's digital storefront. It had a very modest start, but today it sits as the undisputed king of PC gaming, offering thousands of titles, both amazing indies and AAA games included, and has skewed value perceptions so much with their yearly summer sales that millions of gamers have sworn off full-priced console releases altogether.
I'm afraid we'll be deviating a bit from standard analysis procedures today.
Preferring to further invade your living room, Valve barely even makes their own games anymore, which really shows which side of their business is most important to them. Number 6, September 16th, 1994, creation of the ESRB. Games are too violent, and I don't want you playing that, are phrases that still trigger gamers who grew up in the late 80s and early 90s, with bloody fatalities in shooters drawing parental rage. Enter the now infamous Ratings Bureau, created with a mandate to stamp every title with an age-appropriate rating.
But not every game is right for every kid, which is where the ESRB ratings come in.
While it may be incredibly frustrating when you're barely too young to buy the new Grand Theft Auto thanks to the M rating, without it, games might not have ever been as widely accepted as they are today. It's a small price to pay for the sheer variety of content we have now, especially since everyone plays games. Number 5, October 18th, 1985, launch of the Nintendo Entertainment System. Rising from the ashes of fellow console markets all over the world, Nintendo leveraged the success of its Donkey Kong arcade game to enter your home, and it's stayed there ever since. With the success of the Famicom, or Family Computer in Japan in 1983, the company brought the system to our shores 2 years later, along with tons of quality games, removing any stigma about the industry and its piles of incomplete or poorly ported console games that caused the crash of '83. Characters like Mario and Link revolutionized genres and became names that pretty much everyone can recognize nowadays. The NES not only changed consoles, it probably saved the industry. Number 4. July 18th to the 21st, 2014. Dota 2 is broadcast on ESPN. Esports have struggled to find their place in mainstream popular culture, despite their massive rise in recent years. But the mainstream and the world of esports came face to face when ESPN, the USA's largest sports broadcaster, took a huge gamble and spent one pivotal weekend covering Dota 2's yearly tournament, the International.
Newbie's got the superior. Why? Don't come out that far. He's coming down for the heat through. He's got it. He'll be able to swipe it out at least.
Sports fans were confused and pissed off, and the coverage didn't necessarily carve out a yearly spot on the broadcast schedule. But it was absolutely massive exposure for all electronics competitions, and it really raised the credibility of the scene in the eyes of the masses.
I know, it's insane, and I didn't know anything about it until I started doing this as part of the International about 3 years ago. So in my head, I was like, so it's like Super Mario Brothers, right?
Donkey Kong.
What is
Number 3, September 11th, 1977. Launch of the Atari 2600.
Attention shoppers, the new Atari cartridge game is in.
Excuse me.
Uh-oh. Any fan of old movies knows that arcades were the place to be if you were a teen in the late 1970s. But prior to Atari's first gaming machine, there was no way to keep that experience going after closing time, or after you ran out of quarters. The 2600 brought games to your TV for the first time, gaining notoriety by porting hits like Asteroids and Space Invaders for everyone to enjoy without trading their whole paycheck for quarters. Sure, the graphics sucked compared to the cabinets and the games were expensive, but every console game you've ever played can technically be traced back to the 2600. Number 2, year of 1983, the video game crash. While Atari may have started the home console video game industry, they almost ended it as well. The success of the American company inspired competing copycat products like the ColecoVision and Odyssey, which started an arms race of half-assed, barely functional games which in turn flooded stores and consumers with complete crap. Add an economic downturn and awful ports of the most popular arcade game at the time, and then a barely functional movie licensed game, and you have a massive crash that bankrupted companies and almost ended home gaming right then and there. Thankfully, a few standout companies like Nintendo and Sega stood up and picked up the slack. I'll say it again, they basically saved us all. Number 1, year of 1962, Space War, created at MIT.
An intergalactic dogfight, and they would call it Space War.
Many people believe that Pong, with its little paddles inspiring generations of programmers, was the very first video game. But this little-known title introduced the concept to the public a whopping 10 years earlier. Developed at MIT, this space combat game took up a laughably large amount of computing power and hardware real estate. If you've ever played even a single video game in your life, you can thank Steve Russell, the man behind the project. Aside from the obvious graphical innovation and processing power, countless games borrowed the control scheme of this game, showing just how far ahead of its time Space War really was. Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo and subscribe for new videos every day.